Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review. Welcome, everyone. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team. This is a global video broadcast as part of our year-round Living in Oneness Summit. It's great to be with you. Our special guest today is Jean Houston. We're going to be discussing lots of things, including the process of birthing a new self and a new humanity. Jean is a leader in this and has much to share. I'll be bringing in Jean shortly. A quick introduction to Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we believe there is only one presence, the divine, and believe that we're all emanations of the divine. This is true for each of us in all of life. It doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth, it's still true. Our invitation is to live in communion with the divine and be an authentic expression of the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent. We're invited to simply receive God's love and be an expression of that, each in our own way. When we do this together, we create the world that we know is ours. Okay, concerning today's program with Jean Houston, we invite you to share your questions by placing them in the question and answer window. The sooner the better. This way we can get to questions during today's program. I'd also like to extend an invitation to those of you who receive value from our weekly programming. Our weekly programs cost us about $1,000 to produce each week, and we provide these programs free to the public. If you find value in our programming, we invite you to go to humanitiesteam.org. Our website, at the top of the Humanities Team website, you'll see a yellow donate button. You can just click there and contribute. And as well, we're putting a link here in the window. So humanitiesteam.org, the donate button. And thank you for your generosity. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to read a brief introduction for my special guest now. Jean Houston, Ph.D., is a scholar, philosopher, and researcher in human capacities. Is one of the foremost visionary thinkers and doers of our time. She is long regarded as one of the principal founders of the human potential movement. Dr. Houston is noted for her ability to combine a deep knowledge of history, culture, new science, spirituality, and human development into her teaching. She is known for her interdisciplinary perspective, delivered in inspirational and humorous keynote addresses. Dr. Houston is considered one of the most evocative and entertaining speakers in aligning the human spirit, potential, and action with the needs of the time. Her talks are legendary for the ability to inspire, inform, and activate her audience. Her lifetime passion is to encourage the inherent possibilities, visions, and capacities that lie within each person and/or group and translate them into positive action. And with that, welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit. Jean, it's always great to be with you.
It's wonderful to be with you, Steve. I never recognize myself when I get these introductions. My self-image is very different. For one thing, it's 14 years old. I never got out of my 14th year. I suppose that keeps me relatively young.
Well, I'll tell you, as I mentioned, in fact, I'm gonna go to an age-related question, but every time we interview you, you look younger, Gene. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
It's scaring people. I've got my 60th. I've got my 60th college reunion coming up, and it's going to be very embarrassing.
I'm sure. Well, let's just start with an age-related question, because a lot of our audience is in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I myself turned 60 this year, and one of the things I caught a while back is that you shared with Oprah that life gets really good at age 60. And I'd just love to ask you about that.
Well, I think it does. I mean, it does if you believe it does, because now you have a depth of life, a breadth of life. You have an enormous amount of experience. In fact, you probably have somewhere between 5 to 10 to 100 times the amount of sheer experience compared to your ancestor of 150 years ago. You have all this experience, and now you have access to the depth and to the spiritual depths, to the immensities that we all contain, and you can begin to do something about it. So it is a really great time. I just had my 80th birthday. I'm going to think, well, life does begin at 80, because then it really gets interesting, because people figure, my God, she's 80 years old. We don't know how much longer she's going to be around. We better start hitting on her now to do stuff. So that's why I get 1,000 emails a day. Most of them asking me to help them or do something, and I try to do the best I can.
Fantastic. Well, it's nice to embody our messages, and you certainly embody this one. If life really gets good at age 60. Awesome. And Jean was sharing for her 80th birthday, she drove across Canada. So how cool was that?
That was wonderful. And I told you something, I guess it's politically not correct, but I tell you, when you crossed over from Buffalo, New York, into Canada, it was as if a huge weight just lifted off of you, and you found yourself in a kind of area and a feeling of sweetness and even goodness. There's no question there was a difference. That didn't used to be, but it is so now.
That's a shout out to all of our Canadian friends. Christine Glenn is one of the leaders in Humanities team that's actually here supporting this program right now, who's in Canada. So, all right, well, let me just segue over now to something else that you'd like to talk about. You like to share that, talk about living a mystic's life. And
actually, I said a mythic life is what I said.
Oh, a mythic life. Okay, yes, a mythic life. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, can you just share about that? What does that mean for you, Jean?
Well, it means that life in all its occasions provides a larger adventure. It is not living same old, same old. You're not in a state of, what should I call, serial monotony, one darn thing after another. But that because you believe that life is full of wonder and astonishments, and this really is your belief form, that is the mythic belief form, then reality itself says, hot dog, we got a live one there. And all kinds of opportunities, strangenesses, wonders, even fantastical events begin to follow you. Because it's as if you are in a dialogue with consciousness or reality that knows that you are available to be useful in a variety of ways that even you begin to find astonishing. I sometimes have, when people says, what do you do? I said, why don't you follow me around for a month? And they do, and they're exhausted, but they generally find out that they also discover all kinds of opportunities to be of service. And it's a question of always service, never Lord.
Yeah.
And also, if you happen to have as I do have, because these are part of my studies, I mean, I was a very close friend of Joseph Campbell, and we would work together off and on and do seminars for probably about 20 years, And he also had that kind of life. But he was also ecstatically happy. I must tell you, walking with Joseph Campbell was something, because we'd walk along and the sky was blue, and he would be beaming. He would be in a state of kind of exaltation about the sheer beingness of aliveness. And that's something else that happens in the mythic life. You are fully in touch with the vital springs that support everything.
So is there a dimension to that, Jane, that this whole, they say people can be givers or they can be takers. Is there a dimension to that of just kind of putting yourself in service?
Well, you are in service, but the gifts that come back to you in deep well-being, in delight, are constant. That's what I have found.
Yeah.
There's always a renewing charge that you live in. So yes, I mean, I'm 80 years old. I live the life of somebody who's 35, 40. I'm not tired. I don't age. It's gotten embarrassing now, but since everybody brings up, I have to. Also, I'm half Sicilian. You have to know that. That's 4,000 years of olive oil. So that's part of it. But it's also that you are in a constant flow and a give and take with life. But it means you have to appreciate life. And if you go into one of the blue doldrums, which one does from time to time because it's part of the process of being alive, at least you have the strategies and the knowledge and the objectivity to do something about it and realize that it is a passing phase that probably comes from our ancient evolutionary past.
Yes. Well, let me just ask kind of a related question. You referenced Joseph Campbell. So when people embrace this hero's journey and discover their true selves, some of these issues of practicality, will surface where people are looking at their job, their spouse, their kids, their other responsibilities, and then just be challenged. What advice or inspiration would you give to people in this case?
As you well know, Steve, every incident is different. I don't know that there's any generalities that one can apply. But you did use a key word there, responsibility, but break it down. Responsibility. We have the choice of responses and not to go flying off on automatic, which often gives us the worst kinds of actions. So, for example, if a person is going to leave his wife and children, or she's going to do something like that, though it's less likely to happen with her, well, what are the long-term consequences? I mean, this happened in my own family, that when my father, who was a very, very great comedy writer, he actually did the joke, "Who's on first?" Although, frankly, I think it was he and two Jewish guys, because he was from Texas, and it's a Talmudic kind of joke. That's something else again. But he was in the top of his field, writing Bob Hope, writing Burns and Allen, people like that. And then he left my mother when I was about 14, and us and myself, my little brother, with no money. Of course, he wasn't making any, so that was his fault. And his life never got back on track, because at that point, he himself admitted he had another choice of deep responsibility and to really work things out, and he didn't do it. And that, had a cascade of effects, not some of them very negative. So when I look at responsibility, even we're living in a time of radical choice, and we tend to fall into whichever one that our emotional system dominates. This is one where you really ask your friend, our friend Neil about, because he himself could answer that question with his various marriages. I've had only one marriage. I would have been married 52 years this year, but it was 43 because he died 9 years ago. But and he was a difficult man. People want to say, well, how difficult was he? Well, Hillary Clinton called him up, and she said, "Oh, Bob, Bill and I love Jean so much, and she's been such tremendous help to us, and we'd love to meet you, and I'd like to show you the White House." My husband, "Well, I'd like to see the White House. So could you come and we'll have a little party in our quarters, just Bill and I and you and Jean?" My husband, "I haven't got a suit." "Well, can you get one?" "No, goodbye." He hung up on her. I explained him to her. So here I am, always very extroverted and rather gracious and very nice to everybody. Then there's my husband, who is a genius, but is an introverted genius. Is not, Then there's the John Lennon story. You want to hear the John Lennon story?
Yeah.
That's even better. Okay. So, John, I'm away on a UN mission, and John Lennon and Yoko Ono buy enormous numbers of our book, Mind Games, which was very popular at the time. So, John Lennon keeps calling up my husband, wanting to meet us. Please, we would love this book. It's the best book, please. Anyway, I finally get home, and Bob says, well, who are they? And I say, well, they're known as the Beatles. And my husband says, why would I want to meet anybody who names himself after a bug? He refused. That was my husband. Years later, I saw John in a store, it was a Japanese restaurant, and I went over and we had a very nice meeting. But anyway, when you are married to your opposite, what do you do about it? And one of the things is you appreciate the difference. And I would appreciate the difference. It would send me into gales of laughter. Meanwhile, my husband's this Egyptologist. He's a psychophysical restructurer. People would come in here looking like Quasimodo, and they would go dancing out after Bob. So I loved him deeply, and I appreciated the difference. And that was a choice that I could have made, whereas most of the women that I know would not put up with it,
Well, no, I know you still talk about him, and he's just, there's a dear, memory there. So,
very much.
I love that, just pointing people straight back at responsibility. Response. Yeah, where you deeply consider, especially things within marriage and with kids, etc. Of what is I'm a choice. So what's my response going to be here? And sometimes you want to take some time with that, especially where it's something really big and jarring that could be in your life. My parents got divorced when I was young. Also, I was in the 6th grade when my parents got divorced, and there were 7 siblings. So my mother was a legal secretary raising 7 kids. So yeah, it can be quite challenging. Of course, that's how I developed super responsibility, was just by being, brought up by a single mom. And I suspect that was probably true for you also, Jean.
Well, I began working at 11 years old. Because my mother needed help in her business. And so both my brother and I, we pitched in. And we didn't think anything of it. It was an honor to be able to work with my mother, who was a magnificent being.
Yeah. Well, Jean, let me actually go into just deeper into the personal realm here, because you're such an inspiration to so many people. You're traveling around the world all the time, just giving speeches, mentoring people, etc. How do you begin your day? What's your own spiritual practice for just staying centered in being the person that you want to be?
Well, first of all, I wake up with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude is essential, and then I always ask God or whoever it is that I will name as part of the cosmic forces, please let me be a blessing for somebody today. And so that sets the frame. That sets the frame right there. And then I have huge dogs who come jumping on the bed. I have 350 pounds of dogs. They may come by while we're on this thing. So you greet the dogs, and they are very happy. And then I do various meditations and contemplations. I am, something of a contemplative. And I take a shower, I get dressed, and then the day begins. I have a very simple breakfast, and the day begins. But it really is, I try not to go into the email right away. This is important, because email can really dissolve and swallow up your life.
Yeah.
But because I'm a lark, I get up at somewhere between 4:30 and 5 every day. I'm not an owl. Then whatever I've been working on the night before, I pick up again and hope that my dreams have constellated it into some, whatever I'm writing or working on, into some larger, deeper way of knowing and working with the issues. And it goes on and on like that. If I'm not traveling, if I, like tomorrow morning, I'll have to be up at 2:45 in the morning because I have to catch a plane at 5 o'clock and go to Massachusetts for my seminar at the Rowe Conference Center this weekend. So half my time I'm on the road. I mean, there's no getting over that. I do check out really deep. I read the New York Times. I read several newspapers. I find out what is trying to happen and what, if anything, behind the scenes I can do about it. You know, whether it was standing rock with the, you know, encouraging Native peoples, or whether it is what's now coming up today, you know, with the DACA. So I have my hand in various realities. And on some years, I'm actually very busy with the United Nations, and I may be, as I was, you know, on a particular island that is flooded. But I have all these friends, all these people, and it's like, you know, as I say, if you're me, it just comes at you. Jean has the gift of the follow through. How can she help? For example, I was just telling you about a very dear friend of mine who is utterly luminous in her mind, but is caught in a body of cerebral palsy. She was born with it. And she's there in North Carolina, and she can get, for various reasons, she can get almost no help. And this luminous mind wrapped up in this body, and this is a body that does not work. She has the use of maybe one arm. And yet she wants to put out into the world, her name is Ginger Massey, she wants to put out into the world stratagems so that people like herself, and there are many, especially in the elders, are not just becoming kind of, you know, kept in horrible tombs in which they are not really given any kind of real human presence. It's huge. So now that's something that's on the top of my mind now. What can we do? I hope that you can get her on. She's so brilliant on your show sometime.
Yeah.
I mean, humanities team. Look, I mean, just look at what you call yourself. When my neighbor, he was down the block from me, you know, Neil, because we're both in Ashland, Oregon. But humanities team is a team, I think, that is trying to evoke what I could only refer to as the required human. I think we are in a state of speciation. We talk about the old, you know, being in the butterfly, in the cocoon. We have turned as caterpillars into mush. This is mush stage, but in the mush comes the wonder, comes the enlightenment, comes the incitement to something else beginning to come together so that it emerges as a beautiful butterfly who lives lightly on the earth and pollinates. And, you know, we are in that state, finding our parts out of the mush of our present existence to be able to rise and transcend our old form and begin to work not only with the new humanities operating system, but with the radical choices and challenges that are ours.
Yes, well, that's our invitation, isn't it? Some call it Homo Universalis. Yeah, yes. We're definitely ascending into that now. And you referenced or mentioned, you know, new consciousness. And so let's just segue over to this book that you wrote with Irvin Laszlo and Dr. Larry Dossey, What is Consciousness? So
yes.
You're speaking about this as you're out traveling around now. What are you sharing here, Jean?
Well, you know, we are not encapsulated bags of skin dragging around dreary little egos. We are part of a much larger reality. We don't just live in the universe lives in us. And the basis of the universe is mind, is consciousness. And, you know, mystics and mavericks and shamans and alchemists and all kinds of fascinating people have delved for thousands of years into this depth nature in which we really find ourselves tuned to universal processes. So one of the things that I've been looking at for years now is, given the fact that we are the universe in miniature, wrapped up in a biodegradable space-time suit, you know, what does that mean? And because if the powers of the universe are within you and are used beautifully, that's what I'm going to be talking about next at the Roe Conference Center this weekend, then what happens is that you discover things that you did not know you had. You have access to a realm of imagery and imagination that sparks new flights, not just of fancy, but flights of possibility, that how you can really help your community, what you can do in the world, how you can release a lot of the morbid old remorses and stuff and really move forward. How you can even shift time, not a major shift, not trauma, but little things in your past. Now you may say, well, that's just giving yourself an override of another belief system, and that's partly true, but I'm not sure that you're not just also editing the texts of the mind of all being. Because I've seen people shift things in the past, very tiny things, and then it has a domino effect on their present life. You can go to other arenas of this universe. We now know so much more. There are 300 sextillion stars in our universe, and most of them have planets. Woo, do the math. You know what 300 sextillion is? It's very interesting. It's more grains of sand, if you will, each star being like a grain of sand, than there are in the whole Earth. That's what 300 sextillion is. This is a huge universe, and it seems to be underwritten by consciousness, or whether you want to be spiritual about the mind of God, the divine presencing, whatever it is, it's inside of us. We have the same factors, and when we begin to learn, this is what I've been to tap into it, creativity blooms, synchronicities become normal everyday life. You find yourself being presented with opportunities that you never thought that you would ever have. You live the mythic life. And you can even begin to be playful. I've been playful, for example. I have a play that's coming out with my friend Sherry Steinkellner, and which is about living on parallel worlds. What happens when you realize that, as quantum mechanics says, we may be ubiquitous through the universe. There may be variations of ourselves, but still ultimately the same essence. What happens if you have, as one friend of mine had, she was dying of Lyme disease. So I said, okay, let's go to a place where you don't have Lyme disease. And it wasn't in her own mind. She had a sense of traveling. Her name was Jennifer, traveling to what we call Jennifer 4, who was in supreme health. And we then set up a kind of resonance between the two, and it affected her profoundly. And she's now, I would say, 90% well, Now, you would say, oh, this is just playing with your own mind, and you might be right, because it is. But it's mind that isn't just your own mind, it's mind at large. It's the whole realm of consciousness itself.
Yes, what Dr. Larry Dawsey refers to this as the non-local mind, the one mind.
Non-local mind.
Yeah.
We have a local brain, but that is a resonant energetic system that also has access with focusing, with meditation, with contemplative ways, with entering into the deeps that we contain. We enter into this extended mind. You may know that when I was about 8 years old, I did meet Albert Einstein. And I went to this extraordinary school, PS6 in Manhattan, where we were taken to meet Helen Keller, who was really something, and Albert Einstein. And our smart aleck kids, one of them asked, Mr. Einstein, how can we get to be as smart as you? And he said, read fairy tales. And we didn't like that answer at all. So another smart aleck kid, Mr. Einstein, how can we get to be smarter than you? He said, we need more fairy tales, by which he meant imagination. For him, his key ability, his key psychological form was imagination. He said that over and over again. And he would actually put his mind out, on a great ray of light, a light beam through the universe. And from that, it was as if he could come back and know what kinds of patterns and formulas and how to make reality make certain kinds of sense. So when we encourage creative imagination, not just often fantasy, same old, but creative imagination, we find we tap into the very essence of the creative process itself, which is the universe.
So Christine, by the way, asked this question earlier of how do you start your day? And she brings in a compliment. I want to just use the compliment as a springboard. She says, Gene, I love how you respond to life. So many people have been programmed to react to life. Thank you for embodying unity and oneness. Gratitude is life affirming. And it's true, what you appreciate appreciates. And so I want to just use this kind of as a jumping off point, coming back to what is consciousness, because you're basically saying, this is here now, the non-local consciousness, this oneness, and that we can just step into it and live it in its fullness now. And that's your call to action everywhere you go, isn't it?
Well, it's part of the call to action, but different cultures. Remember, I have worked in or had training programs or lectured in or visited 109 countries, many of which are radically different from each other.
Right.
When I am teaching, I have to shift my modality. There are some places where you can be very humorous. There are places where you cannot. And the way I work in these different countries is try to find out what is their essence story. Not politically, but for example, if I'm in India, I will work with the Ramayana, their great, great mythic, powerful, template. If I'm in England, I might work with Parsifal and the myth of the Grail. If I find myself in the British West Indies, say Jamaica, I realize that many of the myths are little tiny African myths and they don't quite bring the whole thing together. But I said, what brings it together? And of course, it's their national sport, which is, what's their national sport? What's the national sport?
Oh, let's see. Is it soccer?
No.
Baseball?
Not baseball. What is it? Like baseball?
Lacrosse?
No.
No.
There's a bat. Come on. You do know. What is it?
Yeah. I confess.
Same as England. They have wickets.
Wickets. Yeah.
Go on. You got it.
Fantastic. So yeah, no. So
I would work within cricket. It's cricket. I would work within a sport structure. So right. You find what is the essential story or way modality, and you use that story as a way of unforming and reforming the social agenda. I mean, we talked about before about the Wizard of Oz. I once wrote a book called The Wizard of Us, and that is a phenomenal story because, as you said, it speaks to everyone. It speaks to you. Why does it speak to you so deeply?
Yes, no, Wizard of Oz, I'm glad you came over to this. We were talking about this just before the program. And I mentioned, I had this dream that the Wizard of Oz is really our story. It's my story, In
what way is it your story?
Where you start out and it's all kind of looking outside of yourself, and finding people like yourself that are also looking outside of themselves, the lion, the rusty, guy, and just it's where you're basically disempowered. You're looking outside of yourself, thinking the answer is out there somewhere. But as you journey down your path, you realize, oh my God, it's all right here. That it's all within. This is this whole divine.
Click your heels 3 times.
That's right.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. And divine. Home is actually the collective unconscious of the human race that you are embedded in.
So it's instructive, isn't it?
It is. May I be politically incorrect, or is that not right for your program?
Yeah, no. There's no politically incorrect. So no, bring it on.
You could take the Wizard of Oz and look at it in terms of the present political issues, where you have, first of all, people living in an outmoded situation. They feel unseen, unheard, okay, and unacknowledged. And little Dorothy going to her Auntie M, that terrible lady Miss Sculptor wants to kill my doggy. She says, oh, go away, Dorothy. Can't you see we're counting our chickens? Go somewhere where you won't be bothering people. Where would that be? Where would that be? And somewhere over the rainbow, when you look at the movie version of it, and you have the 17-year-old Judy Garland with that rich voice filled with fruit, and that intense longing, we all feel the same thing. And so it takes a tornado. It takes a tornado to get her from one place to the other. That's where we are now. I mean, in my flying over the country, you fly over the West Coast and it fires everywhere. You fly over the center, and you have floods. And you fly over the coast and have massive hurricanes. I mean, we are in tornado season. We are in tornado, whether it is an internal tornado or an outward or a political one, And then, of course, she then gets to a place, which is the inner place, where everything is technicolor, 5 senses. She is being empowered to see and think differently in this brilliant land. And she meets the little folk, the people who then recognize her for the fullness that she is. And she's told if she wants to get home, she's got to follow the yellow brick road. That's the road of spiritual pollen. That's the spiritual road. She meets disempowered beings like herself. She meets the scarecrow, disempowered, thinks he has no mind. She meets the tin man, disempowered, feels that with all his empathy, he has no heart. It was not seen for that. The disempowered lion who has lost his courage. These are aspects of today. And then over it all is this terrible being filled with radical narcissism and ego and wants everything is her own way. A real crazy who is trying to constrain and put down and toss out the values of people everywhere. You can make applications if you want to. But she also finds that she has an archetype, a quantum partner, Glenda, the good witch, which is something we all have, our higher essence, the beloved angel, the higher self that is there for us all the time. I mean, you look at that journey and how they face down awfulness, impossibilities, and they get finally to the emeralds. They go to the Emerald City, the city of light, the city that is luring us. What to me, that is the possible world civilization with cultures being deeply acknowledged, all diversity acknowledged. And they really are very, very diverse kind of people. Even the horse goes through many colors. I mean, and then there is this being that is a lure of becoming, of possibility. Is it the God self? Who and what is it? They then have to do incredible things. They have to protest. They have to cross into the darkness. They have to bring light in places where it is not, where they know that their time is running out. The time is running out. It's like today. Unless they can really rise up and working together in community, they make the transformation. And the wicked old witch dissolves, of course. And then they get back and discover that the great Oz was really, he wasn't really much of a wizard, but he was a great psychotherapist and gives them what they absolutely need: the empowerment, the medal for courage, the ticking heart, a degree. And when she finally discovers that it was really inside her all the time, all she had to do, her high self, the Glinda says, just click your heels. Their red shoes. We all have red shoes. We all have silver shoes. We all have a ground of being that will support us through all kinds of enterprises and exercises. And then when she gets home, she says, "Oh, it was all in my own backyard." My own backyard. 1939 movie version of the collective unconscious of the human race, which we all contain. And the wicked witch, the one who, the narcissistic, egoistic, world-trampling fool, is dissolved.
Fantastic.
The shoe fits, Garrett.
There were a lot of prescriptive things there, Gene. No, thank you for that. Yeah, boy, I'd love to watch that movie with you sometime.
Yeah.
That'll be part of the bucket list. So, Gene, let me go here to, this is a question from the net. This is Sarah of British Columbia. It says, "There's so many calamities worldwide, and I often feel overwhelmed and go back and forth whether I should stick my head in the clouds and be uninformed, or should I just take a deep breath and embrace what is happening?" So what would you share to this viewer?
Well, there's the key word: embrace what is happening. First of all, being of my age and also traveling as much and having seen so much of the world, I'll have to tell you that, quite frankly, for every lousy thing that happens, there are hundreds of good things that are happening. You have to have a larger field of reference. Yes, you read the papers, or watch it on your computer, or on the different shows. But at the same time, you find all the places where such great good is happening. What is it? The rising tide of women rising to full partnership with men in the whole domain of human affairs. The fact that we are interconnected, that that we are part of a great oneness, something that you're going to be talking about later today. There are things like that wonderful, The Optimist Daily, something that I always read, where you or Yes Magazine, where you get real, or the great thing that's online, Avaz, which is young people making a difference all over the world. It is huge. It doesn't get the attention it deserves because, unfortunately, the nature of the media is if it bleeds, it leads. If it bleeds, it leads. But it then distorts the fullness of what is really happening. You've got to find balance. And if you don't find balance, then you're just going to, the old brainstem, the old reptilian amphibian complex back there that is always a hot spot looking for hot spots so it can protect you, rises up and overwhelms your nervous system and your limbic brain, your emotional brain. And then you fall apart in your neocortex that really can go out and do things. You've got to find balance. And, really, Steve, what you're doing in Humanities Team and all these programmings that you're doing really is about finding the balance, is it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's about, we've all been in the spiritual gym, so to speak, right, for all of our lives and probably prior lives, preparing us for where we are now, for this whole shift, this awakening, this transformation, this ascension. And it's about really, we're an alchemist, right? When we'll step into that role.
Yes.
So when it bleeds, it leads, which is so true. And just taking that, but being an alchemist with that as opposed to projecting more of that out, right? We've got to be disciplined and devotional and intentional. I love the way, Jean, you wake up and you're starting it with, how can I be a blessing? That's alchemy at its best, isn't it?
And also it's appreciation. It's deep appreciation. All right, here's a story that I don't tell. I spent some time in the White House, as you may know.
Yes.
I was also helping Hillary with her book, It Takes a Village to Raise a Child, among other things. And I found it to be one of the most negative places in the world. Poor Hillary, she's getting trashed every day. No more than that. It was every hour. Every hour, the young man would come with the brown envelope, and she'd open it up and say, "Oh my God, what is it? Come on, let's get back to the book." Next hour, here's the brown envelope. Oh my God. Finally, around 6 o'clock, she might tell me what it was. I say, "Hillary, this is horrible. How can you stand your life? How can you stand your life? This would, just devastate almost anybody, even a typical day here." And she took a deep breath. She says, "Jean, I am so filled with gratitude. There's so many good things and good people in my life and the opportunities I've had. In spite of all this, I focus my attention with deep sense of gratitude. And that's what gets me through the day, that sense of gratitude."
Yeah, well, what a perfect thing to bring in, because I imagine most of our viewers don't know that I'd heard you had an office in the White House.
No, I did not have an office in the White House. I was in many offices, but no, I was helping writing with the book. That's it.
Yeah. Well, boy, that's instructive now, though, isn't it, with these challenges that are here to, again, just keep ourselves centered in this place of gratitude, of blessing, of alchemy, and really using these spiritual tools that we have. Because God knows we can't afford to have anybody sitting up in the stands now. We've got to all come down on the field and play our part to really take this to where it wants to go, huh? And Jean, I'll even bring in here relating to that, because you share that this is a time of great change, remarkable opportunity are upon us to succeed. We can no longer go it alone. We must partner with one another to share innovative and creative ways in which to rethink and restructure our individual existence within the context of expanding global community. So this is just pointing us straight into that discussion. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, a lot of the breakdown that we're finding everywhere, whether it is in the weather or whether it is within ourselves, is something that almost always happens before times of breakthrough and innovation. If we had hours, I would go through history with you and just show you how Renaissance times, renewal times, tend to arise out of times of the collapse of older orders. It's just the way it's like, it's like as we head toward winter, we discover that there are things fall apart, things dissolve, and so that the mush, if you will, or the fertile land can rest so that new things can emerge. And everywhere I go, I find that that is what is happening. It's just that we're living in a time in which we know it globally. So it's like a global collapse at the same time that that we are being called upon to use our minds, our spirits, our many, many different kinds of intelligence. And by the way, there's no such thing as a stupid child. There's just stupid systems of education to really rise to a challenge. Now, if we do rise to a challenge, then I think we're going to see a very different possibility. I mean, what you're doing in the humanities team, for example, is already a predictor of alternate ways of seeing, knowing, being, doing, and by God, going out there and being of real service. And of course, this is a counter to all this other stuff. What happens is that the dark stuff rises up, and then the deep stuff begins to generate. And this is what you find in any kind of civilization and culture. As I said, if we had a whole day thing, we could literally go over history and see how this is happening. Because I have been on the road so much, and I am gifted with, you know what I am? I'm the female Forrest Gump, really am. I tend to have been in all kinds of places when things are happening, So I'm in places where I do see so much breakthrough, the rise of women, the interconnectedness, the challenges that are so great, we have to go much, much deeper to be able to meet them. The very fact of the caterpillar metaphor, that we are in a place where the old forms are dissolving and new forms that are maybe part of our spiritual potency, our spiritual being, we are wombed in a new order of spirit is coming together. The diversity that had been avoided now is in our face all the time. And try as you may to want to throw people out, it's not going to work. These things never work. And we are being propelled to another order of what I'm saying is speciation. I once wrote a book called Jump Time. And in that book, I talked about how when you look at the history of evolution, you can see fossils and fossil records and stone. And the fossil looks this way for 100 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years. And suddenly, whoop, it jumps. And it becomes something new, more imaginative, and often more creative. Same thing is happening with the human species now. We are in jump time. We are at the end of a certain kind of happy fossilization, and we are moving into new forms and new ways of being everywhere. Now, my big thing is, yes, we are interconnected, but we cannot spend our lives, on the screen. And too many young people live on the screen. And unless you have the juicy warmth of human feeling and interconnection, we won't make it. So we either are in the jump time and the time of radical transition into a new kind of speciation, or we're out of here. I mean, in 200 years, there'd be like 1.5 million of us left. We will look awful. And we'll be stumbling over abandoned electronic appliances, and we won't be around too much longer. There's all kinds of science fiction stories about this. I mean, I'm an old science fiction writer, and I find that so many of the novels are dystopian. They're all end of the world or dystopias, terrible situations. That's not a good thing. This is the time for reimagining life. That's what I do. That's what I try to teach. Reimagining life, reimagining society. The innovations are there beneath the surface crust of consciousness that want to rise up. And I believe, frankly, that as we begin to attune to whatever you could choose to call it, consciousness, God, the enormous amount of information that is there available for us in our different or deeper states of consciousness, there are solutions, there are ideas, there are ways of being and knowing that are redolent with potency and promise and ready to come through.
Yes, and hopefully we're all like more near the end of the Wizard of Oz movie as opposed to near the beginning. We're, again, with the spiritual tools that we've acquired over decades, over our lifetime, that we're in that place of knowing, yeah, of course I'm here. I'm ready, I'm stepping in. And you share, Jean, you say that when we step in, that we're in this place of heightened awareness, of awakened sense of purpose, of dedicated commitment. And this is a part of this whole jump time thing, isn't it?
Very much so. By the way, I'm not supposed to mention it, but I will anyway. On September 26th, a very, very great and important book is coming out. Not written by me, written by Lynn McTaggart, who wrote The Field, The Bond, has been doing the intention experiment. And she calls it The Powers of Eight. And all over the world, she's been having groups of 8 that get together to meditate, to think together about healing people. And people are getting healed. But not only are people getting healed all over the place, but the group of 8 becomes attuned to a larger reality. They become mystics. They become spiritually enhanced. And I will just, I'm mentioning it, The Powers of 8 comes out in late September because it's one of the most important books I have ever read. So I'm the first to announce it.
That is an important book. And also, this is a good segue, Jean, because as you know, you're for the very first time, we have a Women in Oneness panel on Global Oneness Day.
Yes.
October 24th. Jean is a part of Global Oneness Day. Lynn McTaggart is on the Science of Oneness panel, and we'll talk about this Power of 8 with Nassim Harriman and Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden are with them. So it'll be an extraordinary conversation. Let's talk about Global Oneness Day. You've been a huge contributor over the years, Jean. And many people, we put out a survey and many people come back with, oh my God, Jean was so inspiring and powerful and blah, blah, blah. So thank you for being a part of Global Oneness Day over the years. And what we call it, of course, our Earth Day for an awakened humanity. So how important, like we're talking about an awakened humanity here, but just your own inspiration for why have you given of yourself in such an extraordinary way, coming into Global Oneness Day so powerfully every year?
Well, if we don't have the sensibility of global oneness, we're in big trouble. And yet this is the first time in human history where we can have oneness, that we are interwoven with each other. In a sense, I cough and somebody in Vietnam sneezes, We are part of a hologrammatic reality. That's something else that comes in with the new physics. And that we are mutually connected and encoded with each other. Now, when we take that deep knowing that comes from physics and comes from spirituality, and we begin to weave it together into a day in which we become crucially, potently aware of it, and it is celebrated and it becomes a resonant field that moves out throughout the earth, you are bringing a great goodness into time. I myself believe that within the next 20 to 50 years, this is my personal belief, we will be moving toward a world civilization with high activation, high individuation of culture. That we are finding our way with all kinds of throwbacks, catharsis of all the old junk happening. We are in historical jump times, and global oneness is the great lure of becoming that is bringing us into this reality. So what you're doing and celebrating is essential to the field, the morphic field, the great resonating patterns that go out and tap into people's subconscious, whether or not they know it's happening to them or not. And it's there, global oneness, global oneness, global oneness. How can you say that? I read my papers, it's all very, no. That's just the catharsis of the old stuff. Global oneness is about what it's really trying to happen.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, thank you for making such an extraordinary contribution each year. And you can go to Global Oneness Summit to see the program for 2017. It's globalonenesssummit.org. You'll see Jean Houston and her panel, Women in Oneness. So you're not going to miss that. I'll come back and share that one more time here as we're closing out the program with a little bit more about Global Oneness Day. But Jean, just with a couple, we've got like 3 or 4 minutes left here, and you have this social artistry foundation. It's the Jean Houston Foundation, was formed to teach social artistry. So this is your nonprofit. Do you want to just share a word about that? And also websites where people can go to follow your work and enroll in your programs and things.
Well, they can go to my website, genehouston.com, to find out things that I'm doing. But social artistry is something that I created, or really co-created with a lot of other people. And it has to do with the fact that to bring the same kind of passion that an artist brings to his or her drawing, painting, sculpting, music, dance, to the social canvas. And so we train people, especially young people, we train people how to become social artists, artists in making the possible in society. And you can go to socialartistry.com.org, or you can go to Gene Houston Foundation, and you'll find out a lot about it. But there's lots of opportunities to learn, to train, to become, and then to do in this world.
Fantastic. So genehouston.com to just follow Gene's work, and you'll see reference there to the Gene Houston Foundation and social artistry. So be sure to check that out.
And you're looking at it now, is that right? You're looking at it now?
Yes, I think we've got, we may be putting a link in the window here. Again, we've got a huge group of people. I'll be thanking them here shortly that are supporting this program. So what's your call to action today to all of our viewers as we're pointed at Global Oneness Day out in October? You're getting ready to hit the road, and you mentioned you're going to Massachusetts, to Seattle, to London. What's your call to action here to our viewers?
Well, the call to action is to be responsive. If you say, like I do, God, Lord, universe, help me be a miracle to somebody today, things will start to happen. Forgiveness is very important. Love is at the essence of it all. If you are living in a kind of terrible eternal return of anger or remorse, it's time to clean up your act. And one of the best ways of cleaning up your act is by being deeply present to others and being a blessing, being of service. There's nothing that works better, I find, in our psychological template than being of use, being of service. I once asked Margaret Mead, who, I was the adopted daughter of Margaret Mead, wonderful mother, she was a wonderful daughter, but that was our relationship. And I once asked her, what do you want on your tombstone? And she said, she lived long enough to be of some use. And I thought, oh boy, that's me too, But usefulness, creativity, reaching out to others, being of service, that is one of the best ways of cleaning up your act. It's the restorative justice of the human soul.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, that's a good place to end. And Margaret Mead, I've got on my wall here, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens
can change.
That's the only thing that ever has.
It has, yes.
So wonderful. Well, Gene, thank you. Wow, an extraordinary hour. And thank you so much. If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team Transformational Education Programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.